Dan Lanning hires Arizona State's wide receiver coach, Rashad Samples, to be the running back coach for Oregon. Zach, good hire, bad hire? What are your thoughts here? Rashad Samples coming into Oregon.
Yeah, it's I think it's similar to what we talked about last week. I think it's potentially a really good hire. I know people will say, "Well, it's wide receiver, running back." Like, I think one of the things that I appreciate, I don't know what just
Where'd I
happened.
go?
I'm taking up the whole screen. There we go.
I don't know how that happened.
Um,
Sorry.
no, you're good. I was just gonna say, I think Rashad has experience coaching running backs. In fact, at the NFL level. So he was at the Rams in 2022. He was the youngest position coach in the NFL that year. So he's a young coach, brings a lot of energy. He has experience with development, experience with recruiting. He was it was forget where it was, but like he has a feel for offense in general. Like he's coached running backs, he's coached wide receivers, he's passing game coordinator, which I think in what Oregon wants to do offensively, to have a running backs coach who also knows the skills and talent like of what you need for a multifaceted attack on offense, I think could be really good. And he brings a lot of juice as a younger guy. So I think like more traditional, like grew up, he was a player, played at Oklahoma State, played at Houston as a wide receiver. So I mean his pedigree's at wide receiver, but I I tend to think that you can be a good position coach if you just drill down and study. And it seems like he has. We were just talking about how Kenny Guyton was a great hire for Wisconsin, but he's a quarterback, and now he's a wide receiver coach. And so I, I think I think it could potentially be a really good hire.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Billy brought up exactly what I was going to bring up. It says, I hear Samples can recruit. And
Yep.
what do we hear about running back coaches more than anything else? Carlos Lachlan doesn't want to hear it, but one of the biggest things about a running back coach is to be able to recruit because it's less of a developmental position and more of just kind of a feel, and you have it or you don't. A lot of it is athleticism, being able to see hole, hit hole, right? And so if you can identify that talent and get that talent to come where you need them to be, then that's very valuable in a running back coach. And if you look at his history at Arizona State and SMU, he's been able to bring in predominantly four-star recruits. And those are schools that do not predominantly get four-star recruits. So
Yeah.
when he's able to bring them in, and it's not just wide receivers, he's brought in safeties, he's brought in edge players. I mean, he's been the primary recruiter for offense and defense and done really well. So the way I look at it, the dude can recruit, and there also is discussion about him possibly being somebody who could be a future offensive coordinator for Oregon
Yeah.
someday. That's what
Yeah.
I was reading a little bit. Is that this is something that Dan Lanning is looking at? And he says this is a guy that you don't just want as your running back coach for a year and then you move on from him. This is a guy that you want in your system to be there for multiple years, and he can hopefully work his way up. I mean, when he was hired, Samples, he wasn't just hired as the running back coach; he was hired as the assistant head coach too. And you might say, well, JR, everybody gets a a nice little title on top of their title. Sometimes. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes if you are just hiring out of desperation, you just hire a guy to come in and do that one job and move on from there. But this guy served in the NFL. He's worked in the NFL. He's worked as a passing game coordinator. He's worked as a wide receiver coach. I mean, this is a guy who's been all over the offense and should have a pretty good grasp of that. So he's
Yeah.
no quarterback coach or something like that, which everybody seems to kind of want as their offensive coordinator, but he does have a good understanding of multiple positions on the offense. And so if you ask me, and this is always the way I look at it, if Ohio State hired this guy to be the running back coach, would I be happy? I would have some concerns because he's not been at a big time program yet. But overall, I think I would be happy. And so I think Oregon fans should be very happy with this,
Oh yeah.
especially after losing a coach in the middle of spring ball like Ohio State did. It's hard to make a good hire when that happens.
I think that's the most impressive thing about it, JR, is like we just a week ago we were talking about Oregon losing their running backs coach. And now, like in a week, they got it done.
Yep.
And it's a potentially great hire. And so the fact that, and it continues to show me that Dan Lanning, I think, is one of the fastest rising stars in the coaching industry, because he recognizes he's got to have a short list whenever he might lose a coach. And like that, you think of some of the pitfalls of, I think, Urban. Urban always talked about having a short list of coaches, but
Right.
like he made bad hires at the tail end of his Ohio State tenure.
That was always Urban's Achilles heel.
Yeah. And like you're seeing Dan Lanning, I think he is thinking about who is my coach in, like, if I lose the next guy, like who is the next guy if I lose someone in a pinch. And I think the recruiting is not only recruiting, but it was Texas recruiting, right?
Right.
And like
Yeah.
Oregon getting into Texas is going to be a big deal.
Right.
And he was at Texas as the on-campus recruiting coordinator. So that was huge. I think also to your point about the associate head coach or the assistant head coach, he was going from Arizona State to Oregon. Now, granted, Arizona State, he was the passing game coordinator, but he didn't really need another title, because Oregon is no offense to Arizona State, Oregon's a much better job. Like,
yes,
much better in terms of pedigree, much better in terms of conference, and almost in every way, Oregon is by far superior to Arizona State.
At one point in time, you might have been able to say Arizona State was better for recruiting purposes, but now with Oregon's NIL they have on top of what they have, I mean, even though it's not the best location in the world, they are right next to California, and they have some of the best NIL in the game in college football. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, like, he did not need that title. And I think you make a good point. Like, I don't think this is an Alex Grinch, right? Where
No,
can
this is not.
Can I have the assistant defensive coordinator title because I was that for 8 years and I want more money? That's not what this is. He is a rising star.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. This is somebody that I think that Oregon, if they play their cards right, this is somebody that I think could be around Oregon for a long time. And I would not be surprised if 4 or 5 years from now, we're talking about Rashad Samples, being the offensive coordinator, and 5 or 6 years from now saying, hey, this guy could be the next Kenny Dillingham or something like that. If he does really well as the offensive coordinator, this guy could be one of the youngest head coaches in all of college football. I mean, that is, if everything goes right, that is the career trajectory path that he is currently on. If Oregon continues to go well, to play well, and they continue to send off their coordinators to be head coaches, then there are going to be open spots for guys like Samples to be able to be the offensive coordinator and then to someday get that job, at an Arizona State or at I'm trying to think of another school, Big 12 school, or maybe a G5 school or something like that. Not saying Big 12 is G5, but I am saying just like, one of those schools that typically coordinators will go and get their first shot at, like Kenny Dillingham got, and like Jed Fish got when I don't think he was a head coach before Arizona, right? I think he was an interim, but I don't think he was
he was an interim. Yeah.
So, I mean, these are some of the schools that guys go to, and these schools are good places for them to learn and grow. And oftentimes, if you have a good program around you, like Arizona has had, then, you can have a good base for them to come in and do well. So,
yeah.
All right. Any more thoughts on that, Zach?
No, I think Oregon got a good one.
I think so too.